Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Happy Monday. We've got another crazy day of Monday meal prep going on here. I had big ambitions today. I am going to be busy on 2 days this week for a kiddo sporting event. And so I was really trying to set myself up for success to be able to not have to worry when we get home about what is for dinner. So my goal today was to do chicken pot pie, gumbo, and meatballs, as well as something sweet. So I wanted to have a couple things that I could just have in the freezer. I also needed to prep dinner for tonight. So tonight we wind up doing the meatballs and rice and some broccoli. But let's get this chicken going for some chicken pot pies. I want to have my devices working for me while I'm doing other things. So we're going to get this in the oven. I had 5 huge chicken breasts here, so I cut them in half. I really like to do this because not only can you cook them in a shorter amount of time, but I feel like it cooks more evenly instead of having the thinner end be overdone and then potentially not done all the way through the thicker part of the chicken breast. So I'm seasoning this up with some basil salt that I made over the summer and just some black pepper. Something super simple so that it's not flavored one way or the other because I am going to use this in 2 different recipes. So got that going in the oven. I am now going to get my Instapot working here so we can get some rice cooking. I do about 2.5 cups of water here. I'm sorry, 3.5 cups of water here to about 3 cups of rice. I do like to have it be a little bit more liquidy because this is a long grain basmati rice and it just tends to work better having a little bit of extra liquid. So went ahead and got that going. My rice cooks on an automatic setting, so it takes approximately 10 minutes to cook. But to be honest, cooking rice in the Instapot works so much better than cooking it on the stove. It's just so much more consistent, and it's become one of my favorites. So next up, we're going to get these meatballs going. I have a mixture of ground turkey and ground beef here. I add in some frozen onions, some frozen celery, and then some of those breadcrumbs, those sourdough breadcrumbs that we toasted up last time we did a meal prep day. I went ahead and just added some celery salt that I had made last year and then some pepper and an egg. And we're going to let this just kind of hang out until it's workable. Going to get some pie crust going for my chicken pot pies. Pie crust in the food processor is so easy. It is super easy to grate the butter, and then I switch out the blade to just the chopper blade, pop the butter back in there, and then I'm able to add my flour and my dry ingredients and just kind of pulse it until it's combined, add my water, and then it is ready to rock. You really just have to keep an eye not to overwork the dough because that can happen when you're not actually touching it, you're just hitting buttons. But once you notice the dough come together, you'll be able to see that it has combined, and then you just want to let it sit and rest until you are ready to shape your pie crusts. I can only fit 1 double crust in my food processor because it's slightly small. So I wind up doing this 2 times because I wanted to make 2 double crust pot pies. So as you can see here, I add a little bit of water, and you can even see in the video, it starts to come together, and then just do the pinch test. And as long as it stays together, you're ready to rock. All right, we're going to get this pie crust shaped so it can go into the fridge and chill for a little bit. When working with pie crust, it's kind of like scones in that you want to just fold it over onto itself once or twice to kind of laminate that butter back into the dough. You don't want to work it too much, otherwise you're going to wind up with a tight pie crust and you won't be able to roll it out later on. So I'm keeping these separate so that I know that 1 pot pie's worth was in the food processor and the other bowl was 1 pot pie's worth. I do wind up just kneading this one a little bit because there was some crumbs that didn't wind up getting fully incorporated in the food processor, but be very gentle with your pie crust. You will wind up with a better product in the long run if you are gentle and don't overwork your dough. So I do wind up popping these in the fridge. I'm going to put a little piece of parchment between these, and then they're just going to go in a Ziploc bag and chill for 30 to 40 minutes. I just want to get that butter nice and cold again so that it's easier to roll out when I am ready to finish up these pot pies. So next up, we're going to go ahead and finish up these meatballs. I wound up adding the rest of the bag of hamburger that I had and another 2-pound package of ground turkey. So yeah, went a little bit overkill on this whole situation and had to put half in a different bowl because I didn't have any room. So I just mixed these up as gentle as possible. I watched an episode of The Kitchen many moons ago, and I can't remember which one it was on there, but one of the gals said you want to, when mixing meat like meatballs or meatloaf, you want to mix it so gentle that it's like your fingers are a fork and you're just kind of folding it over and incorporating the ingredients, because otherwise you can wind up with a really dense meatloaf. So I just wound up giving it a nice mixture, and then I need this pan that my chicken cooked on to cook my meatballs. So we're going to go ahead and get this chicken diced up. I am going to do this in 2 different preparations. So for the gumbo, I want bigger chunks. So I'm going to go ahead and make these about 1 inch by 1 inch kind of cubes. And then for the chicken pot pie, I'm going to want that stuff a lot smaller. So I'm going to do those probably 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Again, just ish, but the gumbo is more of like a stew. So I want bigger chunks in there. And then the pot pie, definitely going to want my ingredients to be a little bit smaller. So we're going to go ahead and get the rest of this chicken cut up for the gumbo. And my helper over here is grabbing me a bowl so that I can keep my ingredients separated. It really does help to create a little bit of an assembly line when you are doing these big meal prep days, because not only do you need to keep your ingredients separate if you're making different recipes, but it helps my brain stay a little bit more organized also. So I'm going to go ahead and get my sausage prepped, and we're going to cut. This is just a basic smoked sausage, just like a chicken and pork smoked sausage. Not spicy at all. My kiddos, some of them like spicy, some of them don't. So I figure if anybody wants to spice up their gumbo, they can just add it separately. Whoops, fed the dog a little bit there. Also the toddler. I have to work around a toddler and a dog at all times. So fancy footwork is always happening in my kitchen, which makes food prep always a little bit more interesting. So these are just going to get combined and set aside until I am ready to make the gumbo. Gumbo definitely takes a little bit longer, so I'm going to do it last, but everything will be ready to just pop in. Okay, protein is prepped. Chicken pot pie, gumbo, meatballs, and then whatever's left over, we're going to do meatloaf. Veggie prep for chicken pot pie. One of the blessings of growing things and preserving them in the garden and then freezing them is being able to use them whenever you're ready and not have to do the prep. Rice is done. We're not going to do anything else to this. We're just going to put it on some cookie sheets and let it cool, pop it into some freezer bags for when it's ready. So one of the nice things about having rice prepped is that it reheats so fast. I wound up just dividing this between 2 cookie sheets and then popping it in the fridge so that it can cool before I portioned it up. And I wound up using some of this for dinner tonight. And then I wound up getting 2 Ziploc bags that each had 4 cups in it, maybe 4.5 cups each. And that is a perfect portion for my family of 5. So we're going to get these meatballs rolled out now that I have my sheet pan available. I have this 2 tablespoon scooper that I honestly really love for just about anything. It's a great portion size for cookie dough, for meatballs, for garlic pucks, whenever I preserve minced garlic, all that kind of stuff. So I just hastily throw these on here. I don't make it pretty because it doesn't really make too big of a difference. If the meatballs are like really wonky shaped, I do go through and fix it a little bit, but I try to squish as many meatballs in there as I possibly can, and in the oven those go to cook. So here we go. I love having all of this freezer prep available to use at my disposal. So quick. All of this is also blanched, so it is par cooked. which does really help in the processing of all of this because I can put all of these ingredients into the bowl and know that everything is par cooked. And then when I actually go pop the pot pies into the oven to cook for dinner, whichever night I choose to, the amount of time it takes for the crust to bake will allow the carrots and corn or whatever to finish cooking and soften up. So I add some pretty simple ingredients to this. We've got shredded carrots, we've got some sweet corn, and we have chicken and some celery and some onion. Nothing too crazy. So I pulled my pie crusts out of the fridge. They are nice and chilled, but not too stiff to work with. So I, like I said, am making a double pie crust for this. I also maybe am weird, but I do not like to freeze things in glass. So what I like to do is go ahead and line whatever pan I'm going to be using with either some parchment or some plastic wrap, and then I will go ahead and make my meal in the pan, freeze it until it is just cold enough to hold together. So I'm not actually freezing the meal, like I won't freeze these solid, but just enough until they hold together on their own. And then I take them out of the glass pan. Sometimes I'll keep the parchment on it. I won't wind up keeping the plastic wrap on this, but then I just wrap it up and double foil it, or if it fits in a Ziploc bag, then I'll do that. And then when I'm ready to actually cook whatever it is, I know that it goes back in this pan and then it reheats without me having to worry about the glass being frozen and then putting it into an oven. I could totally be overreacting, but I have just never been comfortable with this freezing things in glass. And then a lot of it also is the fact that I never remember to take things out and let them thaw or come to room temperature. So I need to have those hacks to where I can pop something frozen in the oven. So half of my filling is going to go in here. I am going to then roll out the top of the pie crust and just give it a little pinch around the edges to seal everything. Gonna pop some steam vents in there. That's what I was doing with my bench scraper. Just a few holes. You can prick it with a fork or you can do it with a knife, whatever you have closest. You just want to create a little bit of a steam escape for the ingredients on the inside so you don't wind up with big blowouts in your pie crust, or you don't wind up with the pie crust being a soggy mess when you actually go to bake it. So this works out pretty good. I kept these in the disc and it rolled out into a pretty good circle. So I was able to just pop these into the pan, like I said, without too much crazy misshaping. And then I'm going to go ahead and just pinch these edges and we're ready to move on to the next thing. So before I get too ahead of myself, I do always make sure to write on whatever I'm making and putting in the freezer what temperature and how long it's going to bake for. So I know that these pies are going to go in at about 350, 375, and they're going to bake for close to an hour. But just because I know this doesn't mean my kiddo won't be starting dinner or my husband needing to put something in if I need help. So having that little bit of extra instruction is always helpful and doesn't take much time. So it is just a nice little reminder to always write down what you have and how to cook it, because honestly, sometimes you wind up with a whole bunch of 9x13 casseroles and you can't remember which one is which. And I'll tell you what, I have definitely done that before, pulled out the wrong thing, and surprise, you're having something else for dinner. So let's get started on this gumbo. So we have a family friend that is from the South, and gumbo is her thing. And we went to a event at their house last year, I believe, and she made this gigantic pot of the most delicious gumbo, and my kids fell in love with it. So I got the recipe from her. I have made it one other time, so this is only the second time making it. And one of the unique things about gumbo is that you make the roux with an oil. a neutral flavored oil. So I'm using avocado oil here, and you really want to just toast it low and slow until it gets a nice dark golden color. She actually toasts hers until it's like a chocolate brown. I did not have time for that this day, but I did toast it until it was, you could really smell the aromatics, and it was absolutely delicious. So at this point, my phone died, and so I did not get to show you me adding in the rest of the ingredients for the gumbo. But after the roux was ready to go, of chicken broth and about a pint of water, and then I dumped in the protein, so the chicken and the sausage, and a package of prepped celery that was probably a half a cup, and about a half a cup of frozen onions. And so this is just going to sit and simmer away while I get our meatballs packaged up to go to the freezer. So another one of my handy kitchen tools that I absolutely can't live without now is my Food Saver. No, this is not Food Saver brand. This was a Amazon Prime Day find that I absolutely love. And these, I don't know how I lived without one of these for as long as I did, I should say. My little helper here loves pushing the buttons, knows exactly which ones to do and how to release the whole thing. And so it's nice to have a little helper whenever I need one. So I wound up putting approximately 20 meatballs in each one of these, and I got 3 packages. And then I also had enough to have for dinner tonight. So this did wind up making quite a bit of meal prep, which I'm excited for, and really excited that I kept the flavor profile simple so that I could add these to a spaghetti sauce with some noodles, or they can be served just sauteed up with a ketchup-y barbecue sauce, and you can have it over rice or with some toasty bread. I did wind up with a little bit extra and wound up just putting that in a loaf pan and froze it. It's not going to be enough to serve as an actual meatloaf for my family, but my thought process is I will cook it up and slice it up and make some sort of like meatloaf sandwiches. So we'll see how that goes in the future. So like I said about the chicken pot pie, I froze it until I was able to actually pull it out of the pan without anything being soupy or falling apart. And then I'm just going to wrap it in some foil here, and then know when I'm ready to cook these that they just go back into my regular pie pan, and then I cook as I would if I had just made it that day. So last but not least, we need to do something sweet for this ending of this massive meal prep day. I have a absolute favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe, I should say. It is from the Chunky Chef. I found her on Pinterest, and I will absolutely be sharing her recipe below. I can link her Pinterest below. It is my go-to for anything basic cookie that I make now, whether it's chocolate chip cookies. Her recipe initially was a white chocolate chip macadamia nut, but I never have macadamia nuts. And so what I did is I subbed out dried cranberries for the macadamia nuts, and it quickly became one of our absolute favorites. The sweetness of the chocolate chips, the white chocolate chips, and the tartness of the cranberries is such a great combination, and it is requested constantly. So this recipe is so adaptable, and it creates a deliciously chewy cookie. Because of the ratio of brown sugar to white sugar, there is a cup of brown sugar in these and only a half a cup of white sugar. And so you get that extra molassesy chew, and it is just divine. So like I said, these cookies are super easy to throw together. I don't even have to look at the recipe anymore. I did wind up doing a 1.5 batch of these so that I could have some extra. Well, I had hoped of having some extra, but as soon as kiddos got home from school and my husband got home from work, they quickly were being swept up and devoured basically right as they came out of the oven. So this is a great recipe to have in your arsenal if you need something that is easy with ingredients you probably already have on hand. It is pretty much foolproof. I have made my fair share of chocolate chip cookies or cookies in general. And like I said, this is my go-to. It is so easy and turns out perfect every time. So this really was a marathon meal prep day. Last week when we were together, we did a lot more breakfasts, and my kiddos just ate the last of the waffles. So that actually went over for more than a week. And we still have some breakfast burritos. And so it really was time for a dinner option. I really love being able to have a few different things available at my disposal in the freezer, whether it be breakfasts or dinners. I think next time I am going to wind up doing a big snack prep day because those are always handy to have, especially with 3 kiddos who are always hungry. I wound up making 2 chicken pot pies this day. I had 3 bags of meatballs, which each had 20 of them in it, which is a perfect serving for my family of 5 to have with some rice or noodles or whatever I want to do for the sides. And then I have that little portioning of meatloaf that I think I'm going to turn into some sort of meatloaf sandwiches or sliders in the future. And then we have the gumbo that turned out absolutely delicious. I will show you here in a minute. I wind up packaging it up in these little deli containers that I have. This is cool. Yes, they're going in plastic, but it is absolutely cool. And so each one of these containers holds about 3 ladlefuls, maybe a little bit more than 3 ladlefuls. And that is about a serving and a half for my family. So when I go to serve this up, I will go ahead and pull out 3 of these. And then one of the accompaniments to this gumbo is potato salad, as crazy as it sounds. So I will probably whip up some potato salad tomorrow to be able to have on top of this. And we will have a dinner prepped and ready to go after school events. So thanks for coming along with me today. Hope this was fun, and we'll see you next time.